we need to make sure everything is scalable, performant, reliable. We need to handle more than 100,000 active users now, which comes with a whole set of different challenges that at the beginning, when you have a few hundred or maybe a few thousand users, you can be really fast and wild and listen to customers. If they ask something today, you can build it tomorrow. You can be really nimble and fast, and that's really cool. I love this phase. But now you need to be kind of more careful and focus more on scalability things and reliance. And there's always something going wrong. You start also to have a big legacy, so you need to start refactoring and bug fixing and all that kind of stuff, which slows you down. But on the other hand, it's really an interesting challenge as well to build something that hopefully, like a system that hopefully in the future will be used by not even hundreds of thousands, but millions of people, right? So it's a huge challenge. It's a very, very interesting phase. And on the other hand, like regulation is of course also catching up. I think 2 years ago when we last spoke, we were still on this no KYC framework. So we were still able, from our Swiss base on, we were able to onboard users from the whole EU and Switzerland, of course, without any KYC, up to 1K a day and 100K per year. People could invest in Bitcoin and get them self-custodially directly in their wallet without any KYC. So that was, of course, cool. Now, the EU and also the Swiss standards have changed. So now that's a thing of the past. And we have much more regulatory requirements to fulfill. The scrutiny is huge now. So with the MiCA framework, we got the MiCA license in France. We have a new entity in France now where our EU customers are served from. And yeah, a lot more regulatory KYC, AML things to consider. So that's also part of growing up as an industry and as a company. So things are different than 2 years ago, but definitely still very, very interesting and exciting.
I can only imagine having 100,000 active users, how many support requests and feature requests come in on a monthly basis. It must be crazy. Really cool. I think the MiCA license and the industry maturing is a really interesting topic, at least for me, because like you have people saying, and I heard that yesterday actually from Fong Li in an interview on Natalie Brunell's show, where he talked about when they first got into Bitcoin and when they first spoke with the first banks like 5 years ago, they came into the big banks, and then there was like one digital asset guy, and this was kind of, he had no access to the rest of the bank. He was just a guy, so they have someone to speak to if it comes to Bitcoin and digital assets. Now you go there, you talk with the most senior people, with the risk people, you come there with like 15, 20 people, and there's actually like the industry of Bitcoin is growing within banks and within the traditional financial system quite a lot. How did you see this happening in Europe? Because like we talk a lot about America, we talk a lot about like strategy and all the things that happening in America, but what is actually happening from a regulation standpoint, from banking standpoint, from that standpoint of Bitcoin is maturing as an industry, also in TradFi in Europe?
So in Switzerland, this has been the case for a long time. Even when we started with Relay 5 years ago, already the FINMA and other regulatory bodies like Financial Market Authority, they all had teams already, like crypto and digital assets and Bitcoin teams. And so did banks. We have banks that offer services like custody and trading for Bitcoin and other digital assets for years and years now. I think 2017, the first private banks and innovative online banks started, and now we have cantonal banks and big banks like PostFinance. Like I would say half of the banks in Switzerland, there are like 150 banks in Switzerland. I would say almost half of them have some sort of an offering, even if it's just giving access to ETFs, or often then it's really like custody and trading directly Bitcoin and other cryptos. So in Switzerland, both from a regulatory point of view and from a banking point of view, it's already there for a long time. And I think the rest of Europe still had to catch up a lot. There was this one big acquisition, I don't know, when it's 21, 22 maybe, where the Deutsche Börse has, the German stock exchange has basically bought Crypto Finance, a big company in Switzerland. And so they started to grow their capabilities as well. And now there are different, like Deutsche Bank and the Sparkassen and a lot of German banks now. Kind of Germany is kind of the leader in Europe when it comes to that, together with France, I would say. And also Austria, and there are a lot of banks now that build their whole capabilities, whole departments, whole teams around digital assets, and also strategies and services and products around it. in terms of regulators as well, like the regulator we dealt with for our MiCA license was the French regulator, the AMF, and they have a whole team of I don't know, 20-30 people that only deal with MiCA licenses and companies that are seeking to be regulated for crypto activities, etc. I believe in Austria it's the same. What's called the FMA, I think, in Austria. That's what I heard. They also have 50. It's a small regulator, but they have 15 to 20 people that just look at this. And so I think on the grand scheme, when it comes to the regulators and banks, we're at a point where no one thinks, even in Europe, where now no one thinks anymore that this is going to go away, but it's going to be an integral part of everyone's portfolio. And regulators are prepared to giving out these licenses, and banks are prepared to offer these products and services around custody and trading, and probably in the future lending and other financial services around Bitcoin and cryptos, because it's clearly not going away with the ETFs, the institutional adoption, even the national adoption, mainly driven from the US, but globally now this is such a big topic. Also with Bitcoin treasury companies and all that kind of stuff, is you cannot close your eyes anymore if you're a bank, and also if you're a regulator. So in the EU, I would say for around 1 or 2 years now, this really has changed and has reached a tipping point where there's no going back anymore.
What do you think is next for banks and Bitcoin? Because I'm thinking a lot of like how they can survive in increasingly Bitcoin dominated world. I'm like not even talking about fiat currencies collapsing or something like that. Like, because like if that happens, it happens in a very long time, I think so. But like even just like Bitcoin becoming from a $2 trillion asset maybe to 20 or $200 trillion asset, how will banks interact with it? It's just that they might actually try to be a relay and to be an exchange themselves and try to bring the custody services to them, and they're like, okay, this now seems to be one of the most important assets, if not the most important assets, and they then just like do all the services for the Bitcoiners.
Absolutely. I think they will look at, okay, what core competencies do we have now? What financial services do we provide now in the fiat world? And they will try to do exactly the same because it worked for them, right? Great margins and everything. And they will do the same in the Bitcoin denominated world. And there's a lot that they can offer, that they will see that they have a lot of strategic advantages actually compared to a startup that we have. We also have advantages compared to them. And I think in the end, it's the clients, the users that decide what do they want. Some want sovereignty and self-custody and Bitcoin only, and this very deep Bitcoin knowledge and brand that only a startup like Relay can offer. Banks will never go the self-custody route, for example. They will always, because that's what they do best, right? For hundreds of years, what they do really well is they are a trusted custodian. They take custody on behalf of their clients, and clients trust them with big amounts of money. And that's what they're really good at. Also, they have a big clientele, millions of clients that for generations already trust them with their wealth, especially private banks, but banks in general. And this need will not go away, at least not for all people. Some people, probably more the kind of digital natives, the millennials and Gen Z, that they look more and more to get away from trusted institutions and have more self-sovereignty and the freedom of really having control of their own money. And with Bitcoin and services like Relay, this is now possible to be fully independent of third parties and just be free and stack sats into your own wallet and travel the world without any limits, without any borders basically, and that's of course what Bitcoin and Relay offers. But then there's still a lot of people that want someone like a bank to help them with custody, with trading, with just a trusted, regulatory, secure environment that they already trust for decades. They don't want to give up on that. Some institutions, for regulatory reasons, need a bank or some sort of a wrapper like an ETF to even invest and get access to Bitcoin with their portfolios and funds, etc. And then also, I think for lending, which is going to be one of the next big things after custody and trading, lending is going to be a service that banks will excel, right? Because again, they do this for hundreds of years already successfully. Lending out money is one of their core business lines, and so I think they will do really well in this new. I mean, those who adapt to this new world of Bitcoin-denominated, Bitcoin-based finance, they will do really well because they can build services, financial services around it that people demand. Those who basically now are still sleeping and are not adapting to this new world, in 5 to 10 years, they might have a very hard time, and they will lose a lot of businesses to startups like Relay and others, who will then take, of course, this demand. The demand is clearly there and it's growing. People want to have access to Bitcoin as a savings technology, as payments, and for lending, as a collateral, etc., etc. The banks are very well positioned to take a big chunk of this market, and that's exactly what is happening with early adopters in the banking industry in the last years, and it will continue. But also it leaves a lot of room for startups like Relay and others who also offer Bitcoin and Bitcoin only denominated financial services, but more in a self-custodial, like Bitcoin principled way for those who kind of understand Bitcoin at its core and want to use the whole set of benefits that comes with self-custody, which the banks will never offer because they are all their services are built around this notion of keeping custody of the assets. So it's going to be really interesting to see both industries, like the old and the new financial industry, will evolve around Bitcoin. But what is clear is that you need to have Bitcoin in some sort of way in your offering if you want to survive long term and be relevant in the financial services industry. So that's going to be super interesting, and I think there will always be different customer segments that will demand different needs and will want to hold and access Bitcoin in different ways. There will be the younger generations mostly, or the more digital native ones that want to have Bitcoin directly, self-custody with all the freedom and all the benefits. There will be some that rather want to make the compromise and have it in a custodial service, like a big publicly traded exchange like Coinbase, or a bank, because they still trust the third party. And then there are some that even want a kind of securitized form of Bitcoin, like an ETF or a Bitcoin treasury company that they can book in their traditional portfolio. And I think that's all fine. It's all part of the distribution and the network effect of Bitcoin as it seeks adoption from individuals to institutionals.
That's very true. I almost hesitate to ask that because like I intrinsically hate bank apps usually. Like there's a few banking apps available in Austria that I'm like, okay, like the app at least like feels kind of okayish, but most banking apps like really feel horrible. But I will still ask it. Maybe there's something interesting in there. Is there something that we can learn from banks that like we as Bitcoiners, not only like really, but just like we as Bitcoiners can maybe learn and adopt from the banking industry that we can adopt and learn from them?
That's a good question. I don't really look at banks as kind of my idol, how I want to build Relay, because I don't think there's
you shouldn't.
There's probably a lot to learn. I mean, they've been very successful in a way, but I don't know, in the new age, it doesn't seem like they are the go-to place to look at for best practices in terms of like innovation and customer centricity and product-led growth and all that kind of stuff that is important for us. I think they have reached their plateau in a lot of ways, because they have become so big and so saturated as an industry. They are very much in a consolidation, so there are not many new banks. Actually, there are less and less banks every year, because the regulation is always increasing, driven by the banking industry. It's good for the banking industry, especially the big players that have influence on the politics. It's good for them to get more regulation, because then it's harder for competition to come in. But that means that they can keep their margins high, and they won't lose their clients to new entrants. But that also means that there's less innovation, there's less competition. But that is exactly what they want, right? That also means that they don't really have to innovate anymore. They don't really have to serve their clients in the best way, because where can their clients go? It's also very hard to onboard with a new bank, like off-board with one and to onboard with a new one. So the entrance barrier and switching costs are very high. And that's, I think, all by design in the last decades, that has been built by the banks themselves. So they have this comfortable garden where they actually don't have to invest a lot and innovate. I mean, the banks mostly still run on technologies of the 80s, like Cobalt and stuff like that, right? Even hardware and software. And now they are getting challenged by neobanks like Revolut and N26 in Europe, that are doing a really good job. And these are also for apps like ours, Relay, these are idols that we look up to, because they start from scratch, build very high-end, new, innovative technology, are very customer-centric, are very growth-oriented, very innovative, and they still have the same banking services. Basically, they're not doing anything new. They do it in a different way, in a much better way, faster, cheaper, easier to use, and innovative. So that's what we try to learn from these banks. They're also banks, neobanks, and there's a lot to get from that. I think the older incumbent banks, there's nothing new really to learn. They had their prime probably a few decades ago, and now they're past their prime. So the only thing maybe what one can learn from them is they're really strong in keeping their existing client base through regulation. I mean, not saying that's necessarily a good thing or something that we want to do, but we see this already with big players like Coinbase. They're also pushing for more regulation so that less new entrants can come in. And because they have a long track record and they took low risks and they have these scalable and reliable technologies and services and very strong established brands, the client base that they have, the very big client base, they keep trusting them over decades and even generations. So that's maybe something we can learn.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks, or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.